20 shocking secrets about the 1959 Chevy Impala. You'll never look at it the same again. If you've ever cruised down the legendary Route 66, or simply grew up during the colorful decades of the last century, you're bound to remember an American icon, the 1959 Chevrolet Impala. With its bold, bat-wing design and distinctive low-slung stance, it looked more like a futuristic spaceship than a family car. But behind that eye-catching exterior is a whole fascinating story, filled with secrets you might never have heard before. Today, let's pull back the curtain on 20 little-known facts about this '59 Impala. Let's take a trip back to the good old days, where cars like this were dreams, companions on every road. The design battle behind the batwing tail fin. The '59 Impala's batwing tail is one of the most iconic shapes in American automotive history. Looking at it, you can immediately feel its boldness and distinctiveness, a symbol of the optimism and forward-looking spirit of the '50s. But few people know that this impressive shape was the result of a creative tug-of-war between two of GM's most powerful figures at the time, legendary stylist Harley Earl and chief engineer Ed Cole. This wasn't negative competition, but a mutual inspiration to push boundaries. According to Chevrolet's chief designer at the time, Claire McKitchan, both were passionate about the Impala project. Harley Earl would visit the design studio, where ideas were formed in clay, and he would sculpt deeper into the tail fins, making them even more dramatic. Then, Ed Cole, the engineer, would drop by, grab the sculpting tool, and carve them even deeper. This was truly rare. Usually the engineer would come in to limit the stylist's flights of fancy, to ensure feasibility and cost. But here, an engineer stepped into the stylist's domain, not to restrict the design, but to enhance it, making it bolder and more unique. The result was a rear end with unparalleled sculptural depth. Just imagine the light hitting those curves, creating the rear three-quarter view that many consider the most spectacular in classic American car history. GM saved money by only finishing half the tail fin. The 1959 Impala's batwing fins weren't just a design icon. They also hid one of GM's cleverest cost-saving tricks at the time. Sometimes, the small details tell you a lot about the manufacturing process. Each fin was made from two separate metal panels. Typically, after joining these two panels, the seams would be metal finished. This is a time-consuming and expensive process, requiring meticulous work to smooth the joint until it's completely invisible, undetectable to the naked eye or by touch. Back in 1959, metal finishing cost about 75 to 80 cents per inch. Doesn't sound like much, right? But let's do a little math. 75 to 80 cents in 1959 is equivalent to about $7 to $8 today. And you're talking about inches of seam on hundreds of thousands of cars produced. Multiply that amount by the huge number of vehicles, and you'll see this was a massive potential saving. So what did GM do, instead of spending millions of dollars to finish everything perfectly? They made an incredibly smart and practical decision. They only finished the bottom part of the fin, where people standing near the car or crouching down could see. What about the top part? They left it unfinished because it was out of the direct line of sight for most people. You can still spot this by squatting down and looking underneath the fin. You'll clearly see the seam where the two metal panels join. This tiny detail is a classic lesson in balancing desired aesthetics with real-world manufacturing costs. A seemingly simple small decision helped GM save millions of dollars, and more importantly, almost no one noticed the difference with just a casual glance. Steering wheel changed because drivers honked too hard. The 1959 Chevrolet Impala wasn't just striking on the outside. It also featured a rather strange and very practical change right in front of the driver, the steering wheel. Compared to the 1958 model, the '59 steering wheel had a subtle adjustment that came from a very common real-world problem. In 1958, The steering wheel had a sporty two-spoke design with a complete circular horn ring. It looked quite unique, almost like Swiss cheese with decorative styling holes. But the problem arose from that very design. Drivers were pushing the horn too hard. Sometimes traffic gets frustrating, and you want to lay on the horn. The upper part of the 1958 horn ring wasn't well supported. When angry drivers pressed hard on it, it broke a lot. It was frustrating when such an important part was so fragile. Chevrolet needed a solution that would maintain the sporty style while fixing this issue for the 1959 model. Their solution was simple, yet effective. They redesigned the horn ring to include only the lower half, completely eliminating the fragile upper section. The result might lack the perfect symmetry of the 58 model, but it still retained its characteristic sporty look with perforated spokes. Those spokes still exuded the performance and style of the 50s. This small change on the steering wheel reflects a larger truth in automotive design. Some of the smartest solutions don't come from complex engineering calculations on paper, but from observing real driver behavior. It was the taps, the punches on the wheel, the hard pulls during everyday use that led to a design improvement. This is a fascinating example of how real user experience shaped the product, even in the auto industry more than 60 years ago. Roof vents were just for decoration. If you've ever seen a 1959 Chevrolet Impala hardtop, meaning the version without a B-pillar between the doors and no convertible top, you might have noticed a peculiar small vent on the roof. It looked like a little air scoop, quite impressive. And yes, it was originally intended to be functional, but it never worked as planned. The story starts with the 1958 Impala, the first car to carry the name and considered the predecessor to the legendary 59 model. At that time, Chevy designers envisioned a smart and efficient airflow ventilation system. The idea was for fresh air to enter from the hood up front, circulate through the cabin to cool or ventilate passengers, and then exit through the roof vent. It sounded like a very logical and advanced idea at the time. However, in real-world testing, the results weren't as expected. Engineers discovered that the roof vent turned out to be in a low-pressure zone when the car was moving. Instead of drawing air out as intended, this low-pressure zone actually caused air to flow back into the car, creating the complete opposite effect of the original purpose. Instead of redesigning the entire ventilation system, which would have taken a lot of time and money, two things GM wanted to save in a rush. So, they simply plugged those vents. And just like that, an initially functional design became a purely decorative part of the car's identity. The lowest seating position ever on a full-size American car. Have you ever gotten into a car and felt like you were sitting right on the floor? If so, you might have experienced the feeling of sitting in a 1959 Chevrolet Impala. This model is often considered to have the lowest seating position compared to any full-size American car ever produced. There's a reason for this, and it's all related to GM's dominant design philosophy in 1959. Lower, longer, wider. That was the trend of the era, making cars look more modern and spaceship-like. To achieve a total vehicle height of just 55.9 inches, about 142 centimeters, a very impressive number for a full-size car back then. The roofline had to be lowered significantly, and when the ceiling is that low, the only way to still have headroom for occupants is to lower the seats as much as possible. That meant the seats had to be mounted almost directly onto the floor pan. The result is a very deep seating position, with the driver's and passenger's legs stretched out forward. This feeling is very similar to sitting in a true sports car, providing a dynamic and stylish driving sensation. For young drivers, this was very appealing and fashionable. However, not everyone was thrilled with this low seating position. For older adults, or anyone wearing formal attire like suits and hats, a common image of the 50s and 60s, getting in and out of the car could be a real challenge. You'd have to bend deeper, and getting up from that low position wasn't easy either. Do you have any memories of the 1959 Impala or any other car with a particularly low seating position that stuck with you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Sharing the body shell with Buick and other GM divisions. You might be surprised to learn that the 1959 Chevrolet Impala, despite wearing the famous Chevy badge, borrowed heavily from Buick in its body design. Sounds strange, right? But it all stems from a desperate race against time within GM. In 1957, the American auto industry witnessed a major shock. GM designers were stunned when Chrysler's new forward-look models were launched. Compared to GM's offerings at the time, Chrysler cars looked sleeker, more modern, and incredibly futuristic with sharp fins and thin rooflines. Meanwhile, GM was about to release their 1958 models, which looked rather bulky and outdated in comparison. Panic set in at GM. To avoid being left too far behind by the competition, GM scrapped their original designs for their 1959 models. They needed a new, more modern design, and they needed it fast. So, they rushed to redesign everything in just a few months, an extremely short time for such a large project. To save time and money in this emergency situation, they adopted a bold and unprecedented approach, sharing major parts of the body structure across different GM brands. And Buick was assigned the responsibility of leading the design of this core body structure. That's why the '59 Impala shared many key components like the front doors, windshield, roofline, and even the floor pan with other full-size models from Buick, Oldsmobile, and Pontiac in the same year. Each brand still had unique front, nose, and rear tail styling to maintain their own identity, but the core structure underneath was the same. This shows how quickly GM had to act to catch up with the competition's new design trends. It also explains why the 1959 full-size GM cars, though different in the front and rear, had surprisingly many common points when viewed from the side. Canadian Pontiacs were basically Chevys in disguise. Did you know that in Canada, some 1959 Pontiacs, familiar names like Parisienne, Laurentian, and Stratochief, weren't entirely Pontiacs like they were in the US? This is an interesting story about market differences and GM's business strategy in each country. Instead of using Pontiac's signature wide-track chassis, a factor contributing to Pontiac's reputation for handling in the US, many Canadian market Pontiacs were actually built on the Chevrolet Impala chassis. That's right, underneath the shiny Pontiac shell was basically a Chevy in disguise. Why this identity swap? It was all about manufacturing costs and import duties. GM wanted to produce cars locally in Canada to avoid tariffs on imported US cars, which helped lower prices and be more competitive. However, they didn't want the expense of maintaining two separate chassis platforms for two different brands in Canada. So, the simple and cost-effective solution was to reuse the Chevy chassis, which was already being produced in Canada, and dress it up as a Pontiac. The result was that in some model years, the shorter wheelbase of the Chevy chassis compared to the US wide-track Pontiac chassis created an odd point. The wheels didn't even sit perfectly centered in the wheel wells, giving these Canadian Pontiacs a slightly awkward stance if you looked closely from the side. Ironically, for many years, Pontiac sold better than Chevrolet in Canada, reversing the US market trend where Chevy usually led. This shows that sometimes simple engineering or business solutions based on practicality can create unique products and interesting historical stories about the auto industry. Ramjet fuel injection was dropped in 1959. Chevrolet was once considered a leader in innovation in the 50s. They had equipped an advanced fuel injection system called Ramjet on the 1957 and 1958 Impala models. This was incredibly modern technology at the time, far superior to traditional carburetors. The Ramjet system offered significant benefits. It helped the engine produce more horsepower, provided more immediate throttle response, and offered much more reliable cold starts compared to carburetors. For speed and performance enthusiasts, this was a big step. However, by 1959, something surprising happened. The Impala completely dropped the ramjet fuel injection option. Why would such a good technology disappear after just a few years? There were likely multiple reasons combined. First was the high manufacturing cost. Fuel injection systems were much more complex and expensive than carburetors to mass produce. Second was the complexity of maintenance. Ramjet required technicians with specialized knowledge to repair and tune, which wasn't something every garage could do back then. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, was the reality that buyers weren't ready for such advanced technology on their mainstream family sedans. They were familiar with carburetors and might have been wary of the risks or costs associated with a new system. So, in 1959, Impala buyers could only choose engines equipped with carburetors. Although still powerful, especially the 348 cubic inch V8 engine, the predecessor to the legendary 409 engine. They were heavier, less fuel efficient, and often considered boat anchors by enthusiasts compared to the sophistication of ramjet. While the sporty Corvette kept the fuel injection option for a few more years, the mainstream Impala had to wait decades before EFI, electronic fuel injection, truly returned on popular Chevy models. Sky-high value, even when beat up or even engineless. Next time you happen to see a beat-up old Chevy sitting on someone's lawn, covered in dust and leaves, you might want to take a closer look. It could be a hidden treasure. Can you believe it? A 1959 Chevrolet Impala convertible, the highly sought-after convertible version, in terrible condition, with a torn interior, tattered top, and even missing both engine and transmission, recently sold at auction for up to $88,500. It's hard to believe for a car in scrap condition. This particular car was part of a larger collection, including over 300 similar classic cars. This leads to a question. Why would a car in such poor condition be worth so much? After all, Chevrolet built over 72,000 Impala convertibles in 1959 alone, so it's not a particularly rare model in terms of original production numbers. The reason lies in the intense appeal of this model within the classic car and custom car scene. Even in its worst condition, the 1959 Impala body and chassis are an extremely sought-after platform. They are considered the ideal starting point for restoration or customization projects. The price of nearly $90,000 for a non-running car shows the huge interest and demand in the market for this model, even if it's just for the body shell or as the foundation for a major project. A resto-mod Impala can be worth over $300,000. Continuing the story about the high value of 1959 Impalas, especially the convertible version, the main reason for this soaring value is because these early Impalas are very popular among customizers and professional restorers. There are two main paths classic car owners often take. One is to restore the car to its original factory condition, preserving every detail exactly as it was new. A perfectly restored to original 1959 Impala sold for $220,000 at auction in January of that year. This price is for originality and perfection. The second path is customization in the resto-mod style. This term is a combination of restoration and modification, modernization. In this style, custom builders keep the iconic body and classic look of the 59 Impala. They beautify that gorgeous body shell. But underneath the exterior, they replace and upgrade the drivetrain and other components with modern technology. This can include a much more powerful engine than original, a smooth automatic transmission, modern braking systems, often disc brakes instead of old drum brakes, improved suspension for better handling, and even interiors with modern amenities cleverly integrated. The result is a car that has the charming classic looks of 1959, but the performance, reliability, and convenience of a modern vehicle. Well-done resto mods with high-quality craftsmanship and parts can achieve values of over $300,000. This price reflects the significant investment in effort, materials, and engineering to turn a classic car into a modern machine hidden under a historical shell. This explains why even cars in initially poor condition, as mentioned in Secret Number 9, still have high value, as they serve as the foundation for these expensive resto-mod projects. Why do customizers like starting with a beat-up car? This is an interesting question. If 1,959 Impalas in good condition can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars, why would customizers or restorers be willing to spend nearly $90,000 for a beat-up car with no engine and missing interior? John Wiley, Vice President of Valuation Analytics at Hagerty, a well-known classic car insurance brand, explained the reason behind this trend. He said that many people buy Impalas in such poor condition with the intention of restoring or customizing them from the ground up themselves. They see the immense potential in turning these cars into their own personal projects, a process of labor and creativity full of meaning. For them, the beat-up car isn't scrap, but a blank canvas. Wiley also noted that because so many 1959 Impalas have been customized in various styles over the decades, customizers, or those wanting to restore to a specific style, maybe modern resto-mod, or even back to original if the car has been heavily modified, prefer to start with an original car in worse condition. An original car, even if beat up, still retains its original structure and details, like body panels, lines, as it was manufactured. This allows them to use it as a precise template for their own vision, ensuring that the basic proportions and shapes are correct. The fact that the car is incomplete, for example, missing interior, drivetrain, or other parts, isn't a big issue for these people. Body panels that aren't heavily rusted are the most useful factor. And the missing interior and drivetrain parts. They can easily buy new replacement parts or fabricate custom parts as desired. In other words, the beat-up condition of an original '59 Impala is sometimes a plus, providing maximum flexibility for someone wanting to undertake a restoration or customization project according to their own vision. If you had the chance to restore or customize a classic car, which model would you choose? And why? Share your classic car thoughts and dreams. The car name was inspired by wildlife. Even the name Impala of this legendary car holds a fascinating story. Did you know that this name was inspired by an animal? Yes, the Chevy Impala was named after the swift impala antelope found on the African savanna. This was quite a unique naming choice, evoking a sense of speed, grace, and power. Similar to how the impala antelope can run over 50 miles per hour, about 80 kilometers per hour. This Chevy was also advertised as capable of reaching impressive speeds, over 100 miles per hour, about 160 kilometers per hour. A remarkable figure at the time, especially for a full-size car. Linking the car to a nimble, strong, and beautiful animal was a smart marketing strategy. It helped build the car's image as a vehicle that was not only beautiful and stylish, but also capable of strong performance. The name Impala is easy to remember, visually evocative, and carries a bit of a wild edge, very fitting for the boom in personal car culture and exploration in the 50s and 60s. This name has stuck with the car throughout its long history, becoming one of the most popular and recognizable car names. Headlights lowered to the lowest legal limit. The '59 Impala boasted many new and improved exterior features compared to previous models. One of the notable changes was the position of the headlights. To achieve a lower, more aerodynamic look, designers moved the headlights down as low as possible. Specifically, the headlights were lowered by 7 inches compared to the previous position. Importantly, This new position was the lowest level permitted by U.S. law at the time for automotive headlights. Traffic laws regulated the minimum position of headlights to ensure proper illumination and safety. Pushing the headlights down to the legal limit showed Chevy's determination to create a design with low, smooth, and bold lines. In fact, the 1959 Impala's headlights were so low that at night you could identify this car just by its headlight beam. This unique headlight position became a distinct identifying feature of the '59 Impala, helping it stand out among other cars of the era. Cat's eye taillights. Besides the impressive low headlights, the rear end of the 1959 Impala also had a unique lighting feature. The taillights still kept the characteristic Chevy design with two groups of 3 lights on each side, similar to the '58 model. However, Chevy added a new styling touch to make the '59 different and more modern. Instead of the familiar round shape, the taillights now had an elongated oval shape. These slender taillights, slightly pointed at both ends, quickly became known as cat's eye taillights. This name evoked the image of a cat's eyes, both mysterious and alluring, very fitting for the car's bold and slightly futuristic look. These cat's eye taillights were a small but extremely effective design detail in creating visual distinction for the '59 Impala compared to the previous model and other competitors. Along with the huge bat-wing tail fin, the cat's eye taillights created an unmistakable rear end. The combination of the 6 oval taillights and the deeply sculpted tail fin was the main highlight at the rear of the '59 Impala. It didn't just fulfill the required lighting function, but was also a style statement, helping solidify the Impala's position as a '50s design icon. The famous X-frame was considered weak. One technical aspect of the 1959 Impala and other full-size Chevys of the era that often sparks debate among classic car enthusiasts is the use of the X-frame. Instead of using a traditional perimeter frame with rails running along the sides of the body, GM adopted an X-shaped frame design in the center. While there might have been technical reasons behind this design, some suggest it helped lower the car and perhaps was cheaper to build. Many users reported a lack of structural rigidity. One person recounted a memorable story about their car door not being able to open if the car was parked on uneven ground. This suggests the frame could twist or flex slightly under uneven pressure, affecting body panel alignment. The X-frame had very deep cavities on the sides of the center, where occupants' feet could be placed, which might have been a factor in achieving the low floor height. However, the feeling of shaking, lacking rigidity, especially when driving over potholes, rough roads, or cornering, were common feedbacks from those who drove cars using this X-frame. Although safe by the standards of the time, the X-frame is considered by many later on as a weakness in structural rigidity compared to other frame designs. The iconic car in a shocking and controversial crash test. In 2009, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, IIHS, conducted a special crash test to celebrate their 50th anniversary. In this test, a classic car, specifically a Chevrolet Bel Air of the same generation as the 1959 Impala, became the reluctant star and caused a huge wave of controversy. The test pitted a '59 Bel Air against a 2009 Chevrolet Malibu. The sight of the classic car, which many believed was built to withstand crashes thanks to its heavy steel frame and thick body panels, easily deforming and crumpling when colliding with the modern unibody Malibu, shocked many viewers. Many people had the notion that old cars were sturdier than new cars, and this test spectacularly shattered that notion. The video of the crash quickly went viral and sparked intense debate, while also creating persistent online conspiracy theories. Why would such a solid-looking car be destroyed so easily? This question haunted many people and led to suspicions about the fairness of the test. Debunking the crash test conspiracy theory. Following the shocking 2009 crash test, as mentioned, many people accused the 1959 Bel Air of being manipulated to deform more easily in the crash. These rumors spread quickly online. Some claimed the frame was weakened or even cut somewhere before testing. Others rumored that the car used had been heavily rusted and structurally damaged beforehand, not representing a typical condition. These conspiracy theories reflected the surprise and difficulty for many people in accepting that their beloved classic car was less safe than a modern one. However, a direct inspection of the car afterward debunked these rumors. The car showed no signs of significant structural rust or substantial frame modification. The drivetrain, engine, and transmission remained intact after the collision, showing that the center section of the car was not tampered with. The truth is, the car simply reacted the way other classic cars would react in a modern crash test. Its design was not built to withstand the types of forces and disperse crash energy in the way modern cars are designed to handle. Older cars with a more rigid frame and body structure in direct impact areas often transmit crash forces directly into the passenger compartment, leading to severe deformation and danger for the occupants inside. In contrast, modern cars have calculated crumple zones to absorb and disperse impact energy away from the cabin. The breakthrough: Flexomatic 6-way power seat. Not only did the exterior change impressively, but the interior of the '59 Impala was also significantly upgraded to enhance comfort and convenience for the driver and passengers. One of the interior high-tech highlights was the brand new 6-way power adjustable seat system called Flexomatic. In 1959, having a power seat was already a very modern and premium feature, often only seen on more luxurious cars. This Flexomatic system allowed the driver to move the seat in multiple directions to find the most comfortable position. You could move the seat forward or backward, up or down. Additionally, the system also allowed adjusting the seatback angle. This provided maximum flexibility in finding the ideal driving posture, especially useful for long highway trips. Besides the power seat, the seat's headrest could also be adjusted up and down, adding further comfort and safety for occupants. This was a significant step forward in interior convenience, showing that Chevrolet paid attention to the user experience, not just the appearance, but also the comfort inside. The Speedminder speed warning system. Another interesting and quite unique feature introduced on the 1959 Chevrolet Impala was the Speedminder system. In the context of increasing highway speeds in the 50s and 60s, speed control became a concern. The Speedminder system was a simple but effective way to help drivers maintain a safe speed or adhere to speed limits. This system allowed the driver to set a certain speed on the speedometer. You just needed to turn an adjustment ring to select the desired speed level. Once set, if the car exceeded that programmed speed, a small chime would sound to warn the driver. This chime wasn't too loud to be distracting, but clear enough for the driver to notice they were going too fast. This was a proactive way to encourage safer driving in an era when cruise control wasn't common. Speedminder is an example of a small innovation in interior design, focusing on driver safety and convenience. It demonstrates how car manufacturers were beginning to think about driver assistance features, even when technology wasn't as advanced as today. Which feature on the 1959 Impala, or any other classic car, surprised or interested you the most? Let me know in the comments. The shift from sporty car to full family car. The 1958 Impala, the first year the name appeared, was initially just a high-end sporty trim level for the mainstream Bel Air line. It was a more luxurious and sportier-looking variant, aimed at people who wanted a special Bel Air. But by 1959, Chevrolet made a significant strategic move. They transformed the Impala from a trim variant into a complete model line, standing independently in Chevrolet's product catalog. This change, marked a clear shift. The '59 Impala not only had sporty coupe and convertible body styles, but also added more common family body styles, like the four-door sedan and four-door hardtop. This shows that Chevrolet recognized the immense potential of the Impala name and wanted to broaden its appeal beyond the sports car segment. They carried the faux sport aspect, meaning the sporty look without necessarily having high-performance engines. Of the '58 Impala to a full-size model line, although it became a family car line, the 1959 Impala still retained sporty design icons, like the familiar checkerboard badge. What's interesting is that even on the family-oriented four-door Impala sedans, customers could still choose very basic engine and transmission options, such as a six-cylinder engine and the slow Powerglide automatic transmission. This further confirms the shift. The Impala was no longer just for performance seekers, but for anyone who wanted a stylish and popular full-size car. This change reflected market trends and helped the Impala quickly become one of America's best-selling models in the following years. It evolved from a special variant to the center of the Chevrolet full-size lineup, a position it held for many decades. 20 advanced old car features that were ahead of their time. Did you know some old cars had features we now think of as futuristic? From parallel parking tricks to four-wheel steering, these innovations changed the game long before their time. Which forgotten car feature will surprise you the most? Stay tuned as we reveal the groundbreaking secrets that made these vintage vehicles true pioneers. The fifth wheel for parallel parking. Do you remember that sweaty palms feeling when you have to parallel park into a tiny spot? It's like a skill test not everyone feels confident passing. But believe it or not, back in the 1930s, there was a guy named Brooks Walker with a genius idea to solve this problem. He invented the park car. His idea was simple, yet incredibly smart. Add a fifth wheel hidden under the trunk. When you needed to parallel park, you just lowered this wheel. It would lift the rear of the car and help it easily pivot sideways right into the spot. Brooks Walker demonstrated this invention, and it really made a strong impression on everyone who saw it. Imagine that, at that time, seeing a car just spin around to fit into a tight space must have seemed impossible. So why didn't it become popular everywhere? There are a few reasons. This system was pretty complex, and the cost to manufacture and install it wasn't cheap back then. Plus, it took up some precious space in the trunk. At that time, many people were skeptical, seeing it more as an expensive toy than a practical solution. However, looking back, Brooks Walker's vision for making parking easier was clearly ahead of its time. It laid the groundwork for what we see today: cars with assisted or even automatic parking systems. A great idea lives on, even if the original form didn't quite make it. Swiveling headlights, Cyclops eye. Driving at night on twisty roads can be pretty dangerous. Traditional headlights just shine straight ahead. You have to strain your eyes, trying to guess what's around the bend. Preston Tucker, a man with some seriously bold ideas, created the legendary Tucker 48 car in 1948. This car wasn't just beautiful, it also had a totally unique feature: a third headlight placed right in the middle of the front end, nicknamed the Cyclops eye. The magic was that this light could actually swivel with the movement of the steering wheel. Tucker's purpose was simple and practical: shine light deeper into the curve when the car turned, drastically improving visibility and safety when driving at night. It helped the driver see better what was coming up on the road. But the fate of the Tucker 48 was just too short-lived. One of the biggest challenges for this swiveling headlight feature was the law itself. Many states in the US at that time only allowed cars to have two headlights. Along with the financial troubles the Tucker Company faced, this groundbreaking idea didn't get a chance to prove its worth on a large scale. Still, Tucker's idea lives on and influences cars today in the form of adaptive lighting systems on many modern models. A smart idea, but unfortunately, the car's fate was too short. Four-wheel steering. When we talk about handling and maneuverability, we usually only think about the front wheels. But Honda had a different idea. Why should only the front wheels be involved in steering? In 1987, Honda introduced the third-generation Prelude, and it was the first mass-produced car in the world equipped with a fully mechanical four-wheel steering 4WS system. This was a bold move to improve the car's dynamics. The system worked pretty cleverly. At high speeds, the rear wheels would turn in the same direction as the front wheels to boost stability when changing lanes or taking sharp corners. At low speeds, the rear wheels would turn in the opposite direction of the front wheels, significantly shrinking the turning radius, making parking or turning around way easier. Honda's initial goal was to help drivers avoid crashes better and give them a sportier driving experience. The 4WS system on the Prelude got a lot of praise for its performance and how it changed the driving feel. However, like many cutting-edge technologies, 4WS had its challenges. It added complexity to the steering system, leading to high manufacturing costs and pricey maintenance too. This system was praised for its performance, but it didn't become widely popular. It was gradually phased out on regular cars, although later electronic technology brought 4WS back on some high-performance models. The Honda Prelude 4WS is an example of a brilliant technology that just didn't find its solid place in the market at the time. Automatic dimming rearview mirror. Try to picture yourself driving on a dark, empty road at night. Suddenly, the headlights of a car behind you blast straight into your rearview mirror, almost temporarily blinding you with glare. That's an uncomfortable feeling pretty much everyone has gone through, especially back in the 1950s to 1960s, when streetlights were few and far between and cars were getting more common. But few people realize that as early as 1959, the Cadillac DeVille offered a seriously smart solution, an automatic dimming rearview mirror called Guidematic. Guidematic worked using a light sensor. If it picked up bright headlights from behind, the mirror would automatically darken, cutting down the glare and protecting the driver's eyes. This technology was truly an invention, ahead of its time. Instead of having to manually flip a lever like with standard two-layer mirrors, everything happened totally automatically, helping the driver stay focused and more comfortable when driving at night. At that time, Guidematic was seen as a rich person's toy, showing up on luxury Cadillac models, and was something that amazed plenty of people in showrooms. Some were unsure about how well it actually worked or how long it would last. But in reality, this technology proved its worth over many years of use and became the inspiration for today's electronic anti-glare systems. By the 2000s, automatic dimming mirrors were pretty much standard on every modern car model, especially on higher-end cars. Heated seats. Cadillac Fleetwood, 1966. Imagine a freezing cold winter morning, getting into your car and feeling the warm seat hug you. Doesn't that feel like a fantastic luxury? Nowadays, this feature is pretty common, but going back to 1966, it was mind-blowing. The 1966 Cadillac Fleetwood is credited as the first car in the world equipped with a heated seat system. Cadillac truly delivered unprecedented comfort. This system used sensors, automatically turning on when the temperature dropped below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, around 10 degrees Celsius, using carbon fibers to generate heat. Initially, the reception wasn't exactly warm. Maybe the cost was part of the barrier. This feature was even dropped after only 2 years. Many considered it an unnecessary luxury, but for folks with back pain or who just needed extra warmth, it was incredibly useful. It brought real comfort for those cold weather drives. But good ideas are hard to kill completely. Heated seats came back and became more and more common. Today, you can find this feature on all sorts of cars, from luxury rides to everyday cars. Cadillac laid the groundwork for a feature that now we can't imagine getting through winter without. Hydropneumatic suspension. Citroën DS, 1955. Have you ever heard of the feeling of driving like you're riding on a magic carpet? If you've ever been in a classic Citroën DS, you'll totally understand that feeling. The Citroën DS, launched in 1955, wasn't just a strangely beautiful car, it also had a revolutionary suspension system, the hydrup pneumatic suspension. This was a huge leap forward compared to traditional coil spring suspensions. Instead of metal springs, Citroën used gas spheres containing nitrogen gas and hydraulic fluid. This system could automatically adjust the car's height depending on the load and the road conditions. The benefits? Incredible comfort on all kinds of surfaces, plus amazing body stability even on the bumpiest roads. They say you could drive a DS across a potato field without spilling a glass of water on the dashboard. However, with the magic came complexity. This system was super complicated, and maintenance costs were really high, requiring specialized mechanics. This system was truly a technological marvel, proof of Citroën's daring spirit. Do you remember any car you owned or your family owned that had an unexpected feature you thought was ahead of its time? Share it with us. Side airbags. Try to imagine you're sitting in your car, driving safely through busy streets, when suddenly a side collision happens. In that instant, your reflexes might not be fast enough, and the space between you and the car door is tiny. The risk of serious injury is extremely high. That's why, when Volvo launched the side impact airbag system on the Volvo 850 model in 1994, the automotive world was truly stunned and quickly recognized how important this invention was. Before that, airbags existed, but were only focused on the front to protect the driver's and passenger's head and chest in a head-on crash. But Swedish engineers at Volvo were deeply concerned about side accidents, where the car's structure doesn't have enough room to absorb a strong impact. They designed a compact airbag placed inside the seat bolster, which would inflate in a split second during a side collision, creating a protective cushion for both the driver's and passenger's torso and pelvis. At first, many people had questions about how well it would actually work, how much maintenance it would need, or the risk of it failing. But after just a short time, real-world data showed that the rate of serious injuries from side impacts dropped significantly in cars equipped with side airbags. Volvo itself, known for putting safety first, made the entire auto industry change its thinking, and then other major manufacturers like Mercedes, BMW, Toyota quickly started putting this feature in their cars too. Rear-view camera system. Before rear-view cameras were everywhere, we only had mirrors, and there were always those scary blind spots. You nervously back up, your heart beating a little faster, not quite sure what's hiding right behind your car. But engineers were thinking way ahead of that for a long time. Back in 1956, the Buick Centurion concept car debuted a bold idea, using a rear-view camera to completely replace traditional mirrors. Imagine that at that time, this was truly science fiction. The initial system was pretty clunky. A big camera placed at the rear, sending images to a screen on the dashboard. The goal was super clear: boost driver safety, get rid of those dangerous blind spots. However, the challenges were just too big. Camera and screen technology back then was way too new, expensive, and huge. The initial reaction wasn't really clear either, maybe because people were just too used to traditional mirrors. It took a full 35 years later for this idea to actually make it onto a mass-produced car. The 1991 Toyota Soarer was the first car to offer a rear-view camera feature as an option, and by 2018, the mandatory rear-view camera rule in the US made it an essential safety standard. A vision for safety that took decades to become a reality. High-compression V8 engine. If you love American muscle cars, you absolutely need to know about the Rocket. It's the name that literally defined an entire era of power and performance. In 1949, Oldsmobile rolled out the Rocket 5.8 engine, and it quickly became a sensation. This engine is considered by many to be the first true American muscle car engine. With its V8 setup and an impressively high compression ratio for the time, it delivered amazing power and torque. The arrival of the rocket engine turned the Oldsmobile 88 from a regular car into a genuine high-performance machine. This car quickly dominated the NASCAR tracks back then, proving the superior power of the new engine. Public reaction was incredibly enthusiastic, so much so that this engine even inspired songs. It set a new benchmark for engine performance. The Rocket V8 engine wasn't just an engine, it was a symbol of power and speed in American culture. Even though more powerful engines came along later and replaced it, the impact of the Rocket V8 on the auto industry and muscle car culture is still felt today. Rain-sensing windshield wipers. Maybe everyone who's driven has been in this situation. The sky suddenly opens up, and while you're trying to focus on driving, you're fumbling around to find the wiper switch, and then you have to figure out the right speed for different rain levels. That was a common story for decades, because traditional mechanical wiper systems required the driver to always adjust them manually. However, few people know that starting in the 1970s, the French company Citroën, always famous for bold ideas, quietly changed the game with automatic rain-sensing wiper technology, first showing up on the Citroën SM model. This system used a sensor placed on the windshield, automatically detecting when a raindrop hit the glass surface and instantly turning on the wipers. What's cool is that the system also automatically adjusted the wiping speed based on the actual amount of rain, helping keep the glass clear without the driver having to mess with the controls. In an era where electronics and sensors were very basic, this idea was truly decades ahead. Initially, this technology was still considered something for the future, mainly appearing on high-end or concept cars from Citroën and a few American brands. Most regular customers stuck with mechanical wipers. It wasn't until the 1990s, thanks to progress in sensors and electronics, that rain-sensing wipers gradually became widespread, becoming one of the must-have features of modern cars. Automatic climate control. Let's take a trip back to the 1960s. Back then, adjusting the temperature inside the car was a real art. You had to twist knobs, adjust the fan speed, open and close windows to get it just cool or warm enough. On hot or freezing days, if you didn't have someone helping, the driver had to constantly adjust things manually, driving and battling the mechanical heating or cooling system. However, the 1964 Cadillac 60 Special did something unbelievable for its time. It integrated an automatic climate control system called Comfort Control. With this technology, you just turned a dial to pick the temperature you wanted, and everything else, from fan speed, airflow, to the temperature of the air blowing out, was automatically adjusted by the electronic system, keeping the air inside the car consistently comfortable. For car enthusiasts, this was like stepping into a new era, where the car wasn't just a way to get around, but also a mobile living space full of convenience. Initially, automatic climate control only appeared on luxury models, something many drivers dreamed of back then. Most customers were still fine with simple mechanical air conditioning, but anyone who had sat in a Cadillac with comfort control, even once, couldn't hide their surprise and delight. It felt like the car was taking care of the owner in any weather. While the production cost was pretty high at first, and not everyone believed this technology was smart, over time, automatic climate control proved to be incredibly practical. By the 1990s, many mid-range models also started featuring similar systems, and today, climate control has become a familiar travel buddy on every trip. Electronic fuel injection, Volkswagen. Before EFI, cars mostly used carburetors. They worked, but they weren't exactly smart. A carburetor is a simple mechanical device. It just mixes fuel and air based on a basic principle, it doesn't really precisely adjust the amount of fuel needed. The 1969 Volkswagen Type 3 was one of the first mass-produced cars to use Bosch's electronic fuel injection EFI system, specifically the Digitronic system. This was a major step forward, bringing intelligence to fuel delivery. Instead of a carburetor, EFI used sensors to measure intake air volume, temperature, engine speed, and other factors. Then a computer calculated and injected the exact amount of fuel needed into each cylinder. The benefits were obvious. More precise fuel delivery improved throttle response, made the car easier to start, especially in cold weather, boosted engine efficiency, and significantly cut down on harmful emissions. In the US, this system was pretty well received, especially the better cold weather starting ability. However, there were also worries about the complexity of the electronic system and the cost of fixing things if they went wrong. Despite initial concerns, EFI proved its value and became the industry standard. Today, every modern car uses an electronic fuel injection system, which is proof that the VW Type 3 was headed in the right direction, super early. Power windows. Try to imagine driving a car back in the 1960s, midday heat, wanting to roll down the window to cool off. You had to use both hands to crank a tiny metal handle next to the driver's seat. If the window was a bit stuck or the glass was tight, sometimes you had to use all your strength to pull it. That used to be a must-do experience for drivers of earlier generations. But then, as early as the 1940s, the American company Packard made a breakthrough with the invention of power windows, one of the most luxurious and convenient features of its time. With just a simple button push, the whole motor system would smoothly move the window glass up and down. For many people, this wasn't just convenience, it was a symbol of class and technology on luxury cars. Anyone who experienced power windows for the first time couldn't help but be amazed. It was the feeling of the future, a sense of ease in an era where everything still ran on manual mechanics. Initially, power windows only appeared on ultra-luxury models like Packard, Cadillac, or Lincoln. Most everyday consumers stuck with manual cranks. But then, over time, car companies realized that this feature didn't just offer convenience, but also helped boost safety, especially when a driver needed to open or close a window quickly in an emergency. By the 1980s to 1990s, power windows gradually became common, even showing up on economy models. Today, hardly anyone has to exercise their arms every time they get in a car anymore. Out of these ahead-of-their-time features on old cars that we just talked about, which one impresses you the most, or do you wish modern cars still had? Head-up display. What if you could see important information without ever taking your eyes off the road? Reducing driver distraction has always been a key goal for safety engineers. In 1988, the Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme brought in a truly groundbreaking feature, head-up display, or HUD, which showed information right on the windshield. This technology came from fighter jets, helping pilots keep an eye on critical data without looking down at their instruments. Oldsmobile adapted it for cars. The HUD system on the Cutlass Supreme projected info like current speed and turn signals onto a small section of the windshield in front of the driver. Its benefit was crystal clear. It boosted safety by keeping the driver's eyes focused on the road ahead, cutting down on the time spent looking down at the dashboard. Initial reception was pretty positive. However, HUD was an expensive feature and at first only appeared on high-end models. It took many years for this technology to become more common. Today, HUD has been improved and is a popular safety feature on many different cars. A technology truly ahead of its time, helping us be safer on every drive. What do you remember most about the very first car you drove yourself, or a car that's linked to your younger days? Seatbelt reminder chime. If you ask any modern driver, they're probably familiar with that ding-ding sound that comes on when they haven't buckled up. That sound can sometimes annoy people, especially when they're just driving a short distance or sitting in a car in the garage. But few people know that the audio seatbelt warning system was one of the earliest life-saving features, appearing in the early 1970s, when traffic safety awareness started to change worldwide. Ford was one of the pioneers, installing seatbelt reminder chimes on their car models. When the driver or front passenger hadn't fastened their belt, the alert sound would ring continuously, sometimes with a warning light on the dashboard. At first, public reaction was pretty interesting. Some agreed, seeing it as a silent reminder friend, but many were also annoyed, even trying to pull the chime out or cut the warning wire just to avoid hearing the annoying calling sound every time they got in the car. However, those sounds actually played a super important role in raising awareness about using seatbelts, helping save millions of lives around the world. According to statistics from traffic safety organizations, ever since this warning system was implemented, the rate of people wearing seatbelts while driving jumped, and the number of deaths from traffic accidents significantly dropped. Today, this feature is mandatory on pretty much every new car model, and modern drivers hardly feel annoyed anymore. Instead, they feel a sense of security, knowing that they and their loved ones have been reminded to protect themselves. Digital dashboard. Imagine a car from the 80s with a dashboard like something out of a spaceship. When most other cars were still using needles and simple indicator lights, Aston Martin took an incredibly bold step. In 1980, the Aston Martin Lagonda shocked everyone when it launched with the world's first digital dashboard. This wasn't a simple LCD screen like later ones, but a cathode ray tube, CRT display, along with touch-sensitive buttons. Sitting in the Lagonda's cockpit felt like stepping into a science fiction movie. All the info was displayed on a brightly lit screen, giving you a feeling of the future. However, the technology at that time wasn't really ready for this complexity. The biggest issue with the digital dashboard on the Lagonda was its extremely poor reliability, and fixing it was a total nightmare. Aston Martin's engineers really struggled with this complicated electronic system. Ultimately, the production and repair costs were just too high, along with the unreliable technology, which led Aston Martin to stop making the Lagonda with this spaceship dashboard. Still, their idea opened the door for the development and popularity of the modern digital dashboards we see today. A symbol of innovation that was perhaps too ambitious for its time. Integrated navigation system. Today, finding your way is super easy with just a few taps on your smartphone or the touchscreen in your car. But few people know that the history of integrated navigation systems started more than 40 years ago, when the 1981 Toyota Crown launched the Electro Multi-Vision system, the ancestor of modern navigation systems. By 1986, the Honda Accord in Japan even featured the Honda Electro Gyrocator, which is considered the world's first in-car navigation system. These early navigation devices didn't use GPS satellites like today. They relied on inertial sensors, gyroscopes, wheel sensors, and electronic paper maps. As the car moved, the system would draw the route on a black and white CRT screen, helping the driver track their approximate position and direction. While it sounds basic at the time, this was cutting-edge technology, usually only found on luxury or concept cars in Japan. For drivers in the 80s, the ability to no longer have to pull over to check a paper map or ask strangers for directions was a totally new and exciting experience. Business travelers, or those who loved road trips, saw this as an amazing assistant. However, this technology still had limitations in accuracy, was very expensive, and difficult for most regular customers to use. It wasn't until the 1990s when GPS satellite systems really took off and costs came down that major car manufacturers started putting modern navigation systems into many popular car models. Today, Digital maps and navigation systems are essential companions, helping millions of people confidently explore new roads without getting lost. As you can see, automotive history isn't just a straight line from A to B to C. It's really a story of bold leaps, outside-the-box ideas, and visionaries who dared to challenge the present and dream about a distant future. All the features we think of as modern today, backup cameras, heated seats, digital dashboards, even electric cars, actually have roots in the pioneering ideas of the past. There were people back then willing to imagine, to experiment, and to push boundaries, whether they succeeded at the time or not. We truly owe a thank you to those brilliant engineers, designers, and even the early adopters who were brave enough to try something new. They're the ones who shaped the cars we drive today, making them safer, more comfortable, and a whole lot smarter. What do you think of these secrets? Which detail surprised you the most? Share your memories and thoughts in the comments. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this trip back to a glorious era. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next journeys down memory lane.